Welcome back to Star Narratives, the podcast. This is accessible and relatable astrology that teaches you how to support your emotional health using the wisdom of the zodiac. I'm your host, Natha Campanella. Hey, thanks for joining me again today. It's Natha. We're going to talk about Capricorn in this episode, and Capricorn to me is really personal because my rising sign is Capricorn. And when I first found out that I had a Capricorn rising, I think I was about 35, and I knew nothing about the sign of Capricorn. Other than that, it was a little intimidating. It was kind of an intimidating sign, maybe partially because I didn't know that much about it. But I think I was doing an astrology class, and she had given us some sentences that would describe each type. And we were supposed to put it together, depending on our rising. And my sentence was something like, the authoritative executive goes to work, or something like that. And I was like, what? God, the most boring of the signs. Of course I have to have that one. But the more that I got to understand Capricorn, the more that it made sense. So, our rising sign talks about the way that people first perceive us and the way that we enter into the world. And Capricorn being, Capricorn doesn't have a lot of time for nonsense. I think as a young person, the way that it translated for me was that I was incredibly shy, to the point of my eyes watering when an adult would talk to me. And just this sense of holding back, not knowing what to say. And of course, that dissipated as I got older. I'm going to talk about it, how that dissipated, but I want to just give you an overview for Capricorn. We all have Capricorn in our chart somewhere. So you don't have to have a sun sign or a rising or a moon sign to really feel into this, into Capricorn, because we all have it. Capricorn belongs in the 10th house. We all have a 10th house, and Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which of course we all have Saturn. So it's this trilogy of Capricorn energy that we all carry. Capricorn is earth, and the earth signs are logical. They really operate from a place of wanting consistency and wanting predictability, and the earth signs are not the ones that are really prone to rushing into action, or to thinking and sort of avoiding action through thinking, or getting so deep into their emotions that they can't see the forest for the trees. Earth signs just are. They're earth. Capricorn is cardinal, and the cardinal signs are the reactive signs. They move into action. The cardinal signs are the signs that start the seasons, really. So imagine that Capricorn begins winter, and Capricorn, the sun slips into Capricorn right at the winter solstice, which is the beginning of winter in the northern hemisphere. And Cancer is the summer starter, right? The sun slips into Cancer at the beginning of the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. And the other signs, cardinal signs are Libra and Aries. So Aries begins the spring, and Libra begins the fall. So cardinal signs are beginners. They kick off the seasons. They kick off new energy. They're really great at getting something started. And that is one of the gifts of Capricorn. Capricorn, of course, as the ruler of the 10th house, belonging in the 10th house, is about achievement. 10th house is our house of career and our house of moving out into the world and really making something of ourselves, being autonomous, not having to depend on others. So Capricorn is achievement oriented. Capricorn really is authority in the zodiac. And obviously, so is Saturn. When I'm talking about Saturn in a reading, I will usually connect Saturn with inner critic, because Saturn does function as our inner critic. And actually, so does Capricorn. Capricorn is judging, constantly judging, right? And so you may recognize that word judging from Virgo too. And Virgo is also a judge. Virgo is mutable though, so slightly different feel. And we'll talk about Virgo in Virgo season, which is a few months off. But for now, we're going to talk about Capricorn. And, you know, Capricorn is that part of us that really pushes us to work hard, because that is the motivation of Capricorn. Capricorn wants rewards. And Capricorn rewards look like success, money, a good reputation, being a provider, being reliable, being respectable, security. Capricorn is very hardworking. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody that has a bunch of Capricorn in their chart is good at hard work, because it's not the work that is easy to us that is Capricorn work. It's hard work. It's the work that we don't necessarily want to do. And so we can bump up against all sorts of resistances when we're talking about Capricorn. And yet, our soul will continue to kind of push us down that road if that is what our soul wanted to come in to learn. And the way that you'll know that is by looking at how much Capricorn you have in your chart, what's going on in your 10th house. Those things will tell you a lot about whether you're here to really experience that idea of making a goal, working toward the goal, and then meeting the goal. And, you know, we're doing that in small ways in our lives constantly. Some of us, though, are a little bit more drawn to it than others. So for me, having a Capricorn rising, once I understood a little bit more, it made more sense. Now, for me, the way that Capricorn rising shows up is that it really does show up as that critical, judging, sort of shy, serious, sensible, disciplined part of me, which is pretty strong. And I always give this exercise to clients where I suggest that they look at the parts of themselves that are really ruled by their sun, their moon, and their rising. So for me, I notice that, of course, in new situations, because Capricorn is my rising, and our rising signs always talk about how we respond to newness. But I will oftentimes show up in situations where I hold back and I'm analyzing other people and I'm trying to get a sense of the room. And I can look at my body language and my arms are crossed over my chest and I'm not really saying anything, which is, for those of you that know me, pretty different than who I am. You know, once you get to know me, there's a lot more vibrancy and a lot more, I can be very chatty and talkative and have a lot to say, but that Capricorn rising, it really was not an easy one as a child, because I always felt like if people had, if only people could get to know me, then they would see how cool I was, right? But I couldn't get past that. Capricorn, a lot of insecurity, and that's another thing that comes along with Capricorn, is that there is insecurity, because Saturn will really represent our limiting beliefs, the things that scare us and the things that keep us back. Saturn in the chart will act like a wet blanket. And that can be difficult. And we all have Saturn somewhere. You can look at the sign of your Saturn and get an idea of where your wet blanket is. And that reminds me, I have an ebook that I have just published that is free. You can find it on my website if you want to get a copy of it. But it goes through all of the symbols so that you can get a copy of your natal chart and make a tiny bit of sense of it. But the Saturn archetype is definitely can make us feel like we have to pull back. You know, it can make us feel like, oh my God, I am not enough. And so, of course, I went through a large portion of my early life feeling that way. And I think that's really why I started drinking as a teenager, was I needed to override that Capricorn. I needed to override that part of myself that was like pessimistic and sort of always there, sort of being conservative and analyzing, because it just felt so boring. And everybody else was out there. They were so fun and they were so outgoing. And here I was just feeling like a deer in headlights, but not like from a fear-based place, but from a protected place. And Capricorn is very protected. And if you're relating to anything that I'm saying, you know, go research Capricorn in your own chart, or at some point get a chart reading, because this Capricorn energy is really strong this year in 2019, and it will continue to be strong through 2020. We have really some of the strongest planets in the zodiac have either been in Capricorn. Saturn and Pluto have been in Capricorn. Pluto since 2008, I believe, and Saturn for the last like year and a half. So we have been feeling this Capricorn energy, and it's this like get your shit together energy, right? And we're noticing it in all these different places in our lives. So something that's interesting about Capricorn is that Capricorn pushes us. And know that when I say Capricorn, I also really mean Saturn too, because it's the same archetype, but they sort of cover different versions of human experience. But that Capricorn archetype really pushes us to, you know, get it together. And when we have Saturn transits in our chart, they will be the transits that come along that show us where the weak spots are. So Saturn is that teacher that says, I don't really care I'm not listening for your excuses. I don't care about them. I just want the work done, and I want it done well. And if you show up to my class and you do what you're supposed to do, then you'll get a good grade. You'll learn a lot. And if you don't, then there are going to be consequences. And I can't remember who said this or where I saw this, but it's one of my favorite things, which is if you don't work your Saturn in your chart, somebody else will come along and work it for you. So think about it like this. Saturn and Capricorn represent the government. So whether that's our internal government, our inner critic, our morals, our beliefs, our values, or the external government in the form of the police, the judges, the teachers, the coaches, somebody has to keep order, right? So if we're out there in the world going crazy, then guess what? Saturn and Capricorn in the form of a police officer are going to come and, you know, slap you with charges. And then you're going to have to go to court, talk to a judge. You're going to have to pay money, right? And it's the same thing. And if we're talking about school, if you don't do your work, your teacher's going to come down on you. You're going to get a bad grade. If you don't show up to your job, your boss is going to fire you. So we have to figure out where we're coming in to be our own government, right? Do we want to be in charge of ourselves? Do we want to be autonomous? Do we want to be making our own money and generating our own success? Or do we want to put that in the hands of somebody else? In which case, it won't be necessarily about generating success. It will be about generating consequences. And, you know, the way that we do things in this culture, which I don't agree with, but it's punishment, right? You do something bad, you get punished. I don't think that that's the most effective way of getting somebody to change their behavior, but that's how it is. So then really what happens is that we get to analyze in our own personal way. Do we want outside authority to come and take control of our lives? Or do we want to be the ones that are taking control? And most of us will agree that we want to be the ones in control. And that's where we generate our own ambition. And we say, I want to make more money, so I'm going to go out and get more education. Or I'm going to learn how to create what I want because I am achievement oriented. And this doesn't have to just show up in career. This can show up anywhere. Sometimes it's around being a better parent, being a better friend, taking control over our health, the food that we put in our body. Maybe we decide we're going to stop drinking alcohol or stop, smoking pot or stop eating sugar. All of these are little ways that we can organize our inner government, which is really what Capricorn is really adept at. So when I first started learning about Capricorn, and I thought, oh my God, what a boring sign. Of course I have to have Capricorn rising. I have to be sensible and down to earth. Boring. But the truth is that really, really comes in handy to have the skill set to be able to say, I want to create this. This place in my life is not going the way that I want it to. So I'm going to harness all of this discipline, all of this ability to self-master. I'm going to limit myself in behaviors that aren't serving me, and I'm going to get to work. And I understand that it's going to take time. And at the end of that time period, whatever it may be, I'm going to be rewarded. And I've seen that dynamic play out over and over again in my life. And my guess is that you have too, right? It's like we have these places in our lives where we're just going crazy and we're, quote unquote, having fun. And by the way, this is so interesting that, we just left Sagittarius season. And so every time that the sun moves into a new sign, it kind of kicks away the energy of the old sign. So Sagittarius, if you think about it, is some of that fun. I'm just living life to the fullest, and I'm exploring and I'm adventuring, and woo, this is great. But you can see how sometimes that there's just too much fun, and you end up with this fun hangover. And you're like, oh my God, I don't have anything to show for what I've just been doing. It's just, I have the memories and that's it. But I just spent all my money and I'm tired and I'm hungover and, whatever else is going on. And so then we move into Capricorn, which is all right, I need to pull it together. I need to set some goals. I need to, get my head back down on earth and start using some discipline. And so Capricorn, some astrologers look at Capricorn like it is the father of the zodiac, Saturn as well. Sort of that tough love, right? That I know you can do it, but you're going to have to be the one to do it. Whereas across the zodiac, we have Cancer and the moon. The moon rules Cancer, which is very much a mother archetype, which is that more of that nurturing love that, come to me and I will create a safe space and a retreat for you to regroup and to feel loved and to feel received. And Capricorn says, nah, just get out there and do the work. And of course, when you do the work, when you complete the job, then you get the rewards. And you can look around your life at the people that have been able to harness that Capricorn energy, that have been able to say, I'm going to, I'm dedicated, I'm doing it, I'm going to school, I'm going to work, I'm going to make this piece of art or this garden. I'm going to do this thing that takes dedication and that I'm not very good at. And I'm going to do it anyway until I'm good at it. Those are the people that are really working with the high side of the Capricorn archetype. And with every archetype, there's a high side and a low side. And the lower side of Capricorn looks a few ways, but you can look, one of the ways, look around the people at your life that just haven't ever really been able to get it together. The people that are still, living at home, not because they're living at home saving money, but they're living at home because they don't feel like going out to work. And they're just laying around all day playing video games and letting their parents take care of them. That's sort of the other side of Capricorn. That's not harnessing the power. And Capricorn is very much about power. And the power that you have to work for. You have to start at the very bottom where you are powerless, where you have nothing. It's not your money. You're not the boss. You don't have the skills. And then you have to walk to the top of that mountain where you're learning and you're having to do some of the things that you don't necessarily want to do. Maybe you have to start off by washing the proverbial dishes, right? And if I'm using restaurants as an analogy, I've worked in so many restaurants in my life. And if you want to get a job in the kitchen, you start off washing dishes, which is like a hot, wet, dirty job. And then once you prove that you can show up, that you don't, that you're not a slacker, then you get moved into the kitchen where you get to cook. And, eventually, let's say that you get to move into then like a sous chef position, and you're learning and you're gathering the skills. And so Capricorn is like that. And it's a difficult archetype for those of us, in our culture, because we want it all now. And when we look at media, there's this sense that we're only looking at the achievements and we're missing the entire road to get to the achievements. So we see these people that, they're so successful, they're so beautiful, they have so many followers, they're making so much money, they have so many clients, they're such good parents, all of this stuff. We see that and we think, well, I want that now. But Capricorn says, well, you can't have that now. You got to work for it. You got to learn how. And that's pretty true of almost everything good in life, right? You don't just have your number one relationship necessarily when you're in your teens. Your first relationship is not usually your best relationship. And it takes sometimes until we're in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s to finally master something and say, oh my God, I finally get it. And I've put in all this work. And it's like that with everything, You don't just get a medical degree. You have to go through many, many years of schooling. So know that that's part of what happens with Capricorn. And when you're feeling that frustration of, I just want it now, zoom out. Have you been applying yourself? Is there more that you can learn? And of course, that Capricorn energy is that inner critic energy. So we come down really, really hard on ourselves. So that's also one of the darker sides of Capricorn, is that we don't see our successes, right? So some of us just don't go for success. We're just like, oh, I'm too lazy, or I don't want to bother. It's too much work. Somebody else take care of me. Some of us are achievement oriented and we get the achievement and we barely notice it. Like, oh, fine, I did it, but what's next? What's next for me? So these are some places to really pay attention to in your own life. And, it's not like every single person is all lazy or every single person is all achievement oriented and ignoring their achievements. We have all of these little parts in ourselves that exist. There are places that I am incredibly lazy, I will admit it. I just don't want to do something. It's tiring, it's boring. I put it off, I procrastinate. And then there are plenty of places where I achieve, I overachieve, and I don't notice it. And then there are places where I am able to, the older I get too, right, the more personal work that I do, where I'm able to actually hold what I've done and what I've accomplished and feel it and feel into it and make some wise choices around what to do next. So as we're in this month of Capricorn, and as you're really examining this archetype and how it shows up in your life, notice those places. Where is your inner critic really loud? Because it's not loud about every single thing. It has a lot to say about certain places in your life, right? Maybe it has a lot to say about your weight, or it has a lot to say about the state of your house. But it really doesn't pipe in too often when you're at your job, right? It has specific places that it hones in on, probably very related to the things that your parents harped on you about, right? Because we internalize that voice of our parent, and then it sort of transforms magically into our inner critic, and we get to carry it around with us all the time, which is difficult and at the same time really helpful, right? Because we have to keep ourselves in a certain amount of line, so to speak, right? Like if all we wanted to do was just lay around all day on the couch and eat Doritos and watch TV, it's not going to last very long unless we can find somebody to support us in doing that. And also, it's really boring. There's nothing for our minds to do. And so we need that inner guidance, that part of ourselves that's saying, get up, get dressed, go do the work. So we're in this big time of Capricorn, and we're kind of seeing it on a global scale, where suddenly people are, this phrase, quote unquote, doing the work. It's a real buzz. It's a real buzz sentence right now. And people are really tuning in to the fact that there's more to it than just our small little lives. There are big problems in our government. There are big societal problems that need some, assistance, need some guidance, some boundaries. And so the more that you're able to recognize those places in your own life, the more that you'll be able to kind of assist some of the bigger things that are happening. And also really identifying the shadow, right? The places where we get so rigid and so attached to our idea of right and wrong that we're unable to see what else could possibly be happening, right? What else is there besides my viewpoint? And I'm the boss, and I know what's right, and I'm the master. We all get in those places too. So look at those places in your life where you're like, the duality between, oh my God, I'm such a loser. I can't do anything right. I can't make money. I suck. And, I am the boss. I am the one that knows what's right. And I refuse to change my perspective. And see, are those places still working? I was talking about my Capricorn rising and how I can enter into situations being quite the skeptic. And I went to a really beautiful ceremony a few nights ago where this really came up for me. I noticed that as every new person showed up, my inner critic, my judge, had something to say about, what was right, what was wrong, blah, blah, blah. And as the evening progressed, I was able to soften a little bit and sort of go into some of my other places of really just seeing that everybody is doing the best that they can, and that the world isn't always an unsafe place, and that it is safe to kind of open And so these things will probably be showing up for you too, mainly because we have so many planets in the sign of Capricorn right now. We're coming up with this Saturn Pluto conjunction in Capricorn. And so we're all being faced with the dark side and the light side of the way that we really, this comes down to like a parenting thing, right? The way that we parent ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves and manage ourselves. Are we respectable? Do we treat ourselves with respect, right? Or are we the scapegoat? Are we always making ourselves responsible for every single thing that goes wrong? And do we have, are we too disciplined in some areas? Are we disciplined enough in other areas? And so these are just big Capricorn questions that are good to be thinking about as the sun is in Capricorn for the next 4 weeks. Because every time the sun moves into a new sign, we kind of embody a lot of those qualities. We have those qualities more available to us. So it's a really good time to be setting goals. Just makes sense why people set goals at the new year, to assess where you've been. What happened this year? Were you able to create what you had set your mind to creating? And what did you let fall through the cracks? Where did you let other people come in and work your Saturn for you? I had a Saturn transit many years ago, and I got audited by the IRS. And it was really scary because anytime the government is involved in your life, it's like, oh my God, am I going to be in trouble? Did I do this right? Am I going to be penalized? Like, what the hell is going on? And I didn't realize until after the fact that I was having the Saturn transit, but it was an example of somebody coming in and working my Saturn for me, because my money situation up until then had been very, laissez-faire, very flimsy. I wasn't paying any attention to it. I was just sort of, wanting more money, hoping more would come in, not really doing a good job of documenting what came in, and, all these things. And I was running a business. It wasn't my astrology business. It was a different business, my jewelry business. And I just, for many years, had been super flaky about that aspect. And after I got audited, it really shaped me up, right? Saturn came in the form of the IRS and said, get your shit together. And I did after that. And I realized I have to keep better records. I have to have a system. And you should see my books now. They're like flawless. And I never would have thought that I would have flawless books, right? Like, wow, who am I? I'm adulting. So this is what I mean, right? Where are the places that Saturn and Capricorn have had to come in and, have somebody else come manage you? Where are the places that you're acting as somebody's Saturn, right? Where have you had to come in and tell somebody else, like, get it together? This is what's happening. And, it's not like you have to necessarily change anything, but this awareness is part of the spiritual awakening that you are on, right? It's all nice to go and do like meditation and do these rituals and work with crystals and tarot and all of these beautiful modalities that come into our lives when we begin the spiritual awakening process. But we also have to really work the other parts, which is the real life, the real world, the Capricorn, the Saturn, of saying, there are certain rules that we have to follow living in this human existence, whether we like them or not, whether we find them tedious and boring and mundane or not. We have to pay our taxes. We have to keep our car in working order. We have to have somewhere to live. And we can't manifest those things through working with, meditation. Meditation is a lovely support, so important for mental health, but we have to really work that Capricorn, Saturn security piece too. So becoming aware of the way that you work it is really paramount to this experience. And so over, while the sun is in Capricorn from December 21st through approximately January 22nd, be looking at that solid, grounded, real life part of your experience too. How are you managing it? What is it feeling like? And we'll get the chance to do more of this earthy stuff in May or in late April when the sun moves into Taurus. But this is it for the next few months. And we haven't done earth stuff since about August when the sun was in Virgo. So just know that, make the most of it. And with the eclipses and all of these planets being in Jupiter or in Capricorn, Jupiter just moved into Capricorn for the next year. We'll have plenty of support. But I think most of us would agree that it feels better when we are responsible for our own experience and we don't have somebody else coming in and working our Saturn for us. It gives us a sense of autonomy to be in charge and hardworking for our own goals, right? We want to be in integrity with our own lives and what we want. We don't necessarily want somebody coming in and saying, I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you how it works, because that somebody else's ideas don't always work with what we want. And there's also that piece of the fact that we do live in a society where there is a government. And so we are very governed in other parts. And so, what are the gifts of that? We don't have to get out and fill up the potholes in our street. The government comes and takes care of that. So there's all of this. It's this huge piece of thought work, if you're willing to take it on, and really relevant for the time, because obviously big Capricorn energy. Where are you responsible in your life? Where are you irresponsible? Where is it really nice to have somebody else taking the responsibility from you? And where would you like to pull some of it back and use it to create something that feels better to you than what you have and where you are? All right, I think that is all that I have to say about Capricorn. If you have a lot of Capricorn in your chart, or you're really resonating with this, schedule a reading, because it's probably a good piece of, it's a good time to examine it, where it shows up, how it shows up, where it is in your chart, what area of life. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this solo cast, and I will talk to you all in a few weeks. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to work with me privately or read more about all of the numerous ways to work with me, visit my website, nathacampanella.com. I really appreciate any time that you take to leave a review of this podcast on any of the platforms that you listen on. It helps other people to find it. And of course, if you enjoy this podcast, share it widely and freely with those that you know and love. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.